This is Hockey Talk, episode number 4, where we talk everything hockey. I am John.
And I'm Mike.
Okay, let's go. First topic, Mike, is how did the Flyers against Montreal, taking on the Canadiens last week on March the 28th? You said here on our show you're hoping that the Flyers would win 4-3, maybe it would go into overtime. I know the Canadiens won 4-1. I need to ask you, did you take any flack for your prediction?
Yeah, Matt didn't really let me off the hook too easily there on it. We went over to his place to watch the game, and
So you were with a bunch of friends watching the game?
yeah, me, Matt, and Ben were watching, and yeah, didn't go as planned. So it's a rough start right off the get go. So they play again on Tuesday. So hopefully, the luck will change this week for the Flyers because it
Now
needs to.
is that game in Philadelphia?
I think it's in Montreal again.
Oh,
Yeah,
really? Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
They're
All
on a
right.
4-game road trip, so.
Well, hopefully your Flyers win. Now they're still in a playoff spot, so it's not the end of the world. But I
Clinging
just thought
on.
I just thought I would ask if you took any flack for that, since you were quite wrong and it wasn't really close. I was
Yeah,
watching
not as
it.
much
So.
as I thought, but of course, my wife gave me a significant hard time about it as well.
Well, your wife is allowed, so there you go. All right. For the second topic, Mike, I want to talk some about the Washington Capitals. And I know that I briefly mentioned Ovechkin here. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about him. But there's something else I want to get into here about Washington. I just have to ask you, Mike, how in the blazes are the Washington Capitals in a playoff spot? Now, their top scorer is Dylan Strome. In 74 games, the guy has 62 points. Now, I know last year was his career high. Hit 65 points. I noticed this year that he's playing a minute more on average per game. So that's all good for him. He's probably going to beat his 65 points from last year. Nothing wrong with any of that. But he's a minus 12, Mike. The top 15 point getters on the Washington Capitals, 12 of the top 15 are in the minus.
Yeah.
How on earth is this team in a playoff spot? I can't figure it out, Mike. You have to tell me how this is even possible.
Well, I mean, they started off really badly and they gave up a lot of goals. So the thing is with the Capitals, most of the games that they tend to win are generally close games. And the ones that they lose pretty badly. So this
Yeah,
is
so
why.
the other night they lost 6-2, I noticed there.
Yeah. So when they're losing by 4 or 5 goals, they're all their players are tend to be a minus. So and I find that with them this year, they've lost a lot of lopsided games and they've won close games. So that kind of dictates your plus minus right there. As far as them being in a playoff spot or they actually are. They're ahead of Detroit for the wild card. So a little
Yeah, it's very
surprising.
close.
Yeah, I think they're a point ahead of Detroit. So it's a little bit surprising considering that they traded players away at the deadline and didn't really bring anything in. So in their case, maybe addition by subtraction was the solution to some of their issues.
Okay. Well, if the Capitals were to make the playoffs, Mike, would you consider taking any of their players in a playoff hockey pool? Because there's no way Ovechkin's going to go early this time around.
No, I think Washington players, depending on how deep your playoff pool is, they'll be the last few picks. I don't see more than 5 people maybe on their team being picked. Ovechkin, Strome, Carlson,
Right.
those guys for sure. Then you got maybe Wilson. There might be another guy or two that could be picked, but I don't foresee very many Capitals being picked just for the probability of them getting knocked out in the first round.
Okay. So that's pretty much a no on your part.
Right? Yeah, I would. They would be a team that I would avoid personally.
Okay. Well, fair enough. All right. Third topic, Mike, is we want to get a little more in depth about some of the prospects.
Okay.
There are some players that should step in next year and be good contributors for their teams. Mike, I want to know who it is that you would like to talk about tonight.
All right. So As we discussed a little earlier, we're going to talk a little more players that for this week. We're going to talk more players that are have seen a little bit of NHL action that should be probably a little bit more capable of contributing for next season. So some of those players, the first one, and he's really stood out recently, is Logan Stankoven of Dallas. He's stepped into a top two line role when needed, when they've had some injuries. He's played very well. I think they have him more on the third line right now. However, Dallas is a fairly balanced scoring team. So I think that he's going to be one of the higher end rookies next year. I still believe he'll have his rookie status. I don't think he'll play the 26 games. I don't know if that's possible for the rest of this year. So I think he's going to be one of the guys next year. Number two, and I wouldn't call him a rookie anymore because he's kind of surpassed the age, but another intriguing one will be Ivan Fedotov of the Flyers as their goalie. Um, potentially be the starter next year.
So you
He
think
has.
he'd take the starting role next year, maybe?
I think it's probably more going to be a 50-50 split with Urson.
Okay.
However, we'll see what he's got the last few games of the year. They're looking at signing him to an extension. I know he's 27 years old right now, so he's really a little bit older than than a rookie. But as a first year player, I think that he can have a big impact on how well the Flyers do next year. The reason I say that is Urson has played the majority of the games over the last 3 months, and I'll be honest, I think he's a little overworked, and I think this is why the Flyers have started to struggle a little bit. So I think the last few games of the year, I think the Flyers have like 6 games left. I think we're probably going to see Fedotov for 2, maybe 3 of those games. So um, for me, hopefully he turns out to be a good one and works out for us next year. Um, Couple other guys. We got Simon Edvinsson of the Detroit Red Wings as their defenseman, and I think he's going to be an anchor on that team. And I don't mean anchor as like sink the team into the water. I mean he'll be an anchor that they can rely on for big minutes. He's come up this year. He's played some. I think next year he's going to take a more prominent role and really help that Detroit team move forward. Um, Another guy is a couple other goalies, actually, we'll talk about this week. One is for Nashville, Yaroslav Askarov. So he's playing in the American League this year, doing very well. Good chance he gets goalie of the year down there. I think he is going to step in next year, not necessarily to be the starter, but he'll start off, I believe, as the backup unless Nashville decides that they trade UC Saros over the summer. I know there was some deadline talk about him possibly being moved, and the reason for that is I believe Nashville thinks that they've got the next one in line right behind them. So after him, another one would be Jesper Wallstedt of the Minnesota Wild. Another one, he's only played one game this year, and he got shelled pretty good. However, he's been a top goalie prospect for the last couple of years, and I think next year with Marc-Andre Fleury potentially retiring and with Gustafsson not playing that well so far this year, I think it's going to give him an opportunity to step in and at least get half the starts. So,
Right. And
so those
sometimes
are the
sometimes the opportunity is all you need.
yeah. Well, that's true. Like you never know. Like we've seen goalies step in and do this in the past, some with better results than others, but we will have to see. So those were the 5 guys I wanted to talk about for this week. We'll talk a little bit more about some other guys next week, and yeah,
Right, right. And we're going to do that every once in a while, bring up some of these prospects. And I just want to know, Mike, you named 3 goalies and a forward and a defenseman. Would
yeah.
you would you consider taking either one of those players for a playoff hockey pool?
I
Are they
think
just not strong enough yet?
I think that if any of those guys do get taken, I think it would be Stankoven, whereas he's gotten more minutes to play in offensive situations.
Right.
If I was picking a goalie, I probably wouldn't because Askarov and Wallstedt aren't aren't going to be on the team for the playoffs. Whereas Fedotov will be on the team, but I do believe that if Philly gets in, they're probably going to start with Urson unless he slips up, and then they'll make a change at that point. But
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Well, our fourth topic for this evening is Auston Matthews, Mike. Now, I love Auston Matthews. Matthews has 63 goals, and the team has played 75 games. That means, Mike, can Auston Matthews get 7 more goals in 7 games? What do you think his chances are?
I wouldn't put it past him. Is it likely? I don't think the odds are necessarily in his favor, but you never know. He can go out there and get 2 hat tricks in a row like he did earlier this year. So I definitely wouldn't bet against it happening. It's possible.
Okay, well, I did a little bit of research on this. Now, 70 goals has only been done in the NHL 14 times by 8 different players. Of course, Gretzky has the most. He did it 4 times. The last players to do it was in the 92-93 season, way, way back.
Mhm.
Alexander McGillney and Timo Solani, they both had 76 goals that same year. I want to know, Mike, with more goals being scored now in the NHL, do you think the 70 goal score is coming back?
I think it's possible with select players. Matthews has been a top tier guy, so seeing him do it wouldn't be that surprising. You really got to be a real high end player, and I mean, there's guys that have a lot of potential to do it, like Pasternak of Boston,
Yes.
excellent player, and if he still had Patrice Bergeron there this year, he might have done it himself.
Yes.
When his number
True.
one center is Pavel Zacha, who was kind of put in that role because they don't have any other high end centermen. Uh, if they had someone a little stronger than him, I think he would be another candidate that could get 70 goals. And you can never discount McDavid, although he does tend to put up more assists than goals. But you can't think it's not possible with him as well.
Right, right. Yeah, I just wanted to dig into that a little bit because I was wondering how many players have actually scored 70 goals. And, it's not a whole lot of people that have done it. 14 times it's been done and 8 different people. It hasn't been done very often. 70 goals is a lot of goals, obviously.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. And I mean, the thing that makes it a little bit more difficult now than maybe in the 80s is it's not as freewheeling as it was back then with
exactly.
some of these guys like McGillney and Solani. And I don't think Bure ever got 70, but I think he was up there.
Yeah, no,
Um,
he never got 70. No.
yeah. So like the 80s and 90s were a little bit more high scoring. The goalies were not as skilled like back then. Some teams didn't even have goalie coaches like way
That's
back
true.
when. So, now with a lot of the technical stuff that they would do with work on goalies, eh, they know how to play the game a little bit. I don't want to say better, but uh, they play the angles and the percentages a lot better, I do believe, than in the past.
Right. And all the teams play a system now. And back in the 80s, that just wasn't the case.
No,
It wasn't like it is now, not even
right.
close. I mean, if you watch a game from the 80s, you can see the difference. It's
Yeah,
massive.
for sure.
And the goalies looked small too back then.
Oh, absolutely. Like I think we mentioned earlier in one of the shows that the goalies were basically wearing the similar type of equipment that players wear at this point. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Well, Mike, our fifth and final topic, and I'm going to talk about Sidney Crosby just a little bit. I know we already talked about Sidney Crosby. I didn't know that this was going to be a thing, or I would have mentioned it last time we discussed him. But because he had 2 goals and an assist against the New York Rangers one night last week or this past week, Crosby now has 82 points this season, and that gives him a point a game for each of his first 19 NHL seasons, tying Wayne Gretzky's record. I mean, that's quite an amazing achievement. A point a game, averaging at least a point a game for 19 years.
mhm.
So I want to know, can he beat that record next year, Mike? Can he can he beat Gretzky's record? He's tied with him right now. So can he do it for 20 years in a row? What do you think?
Absolutely. I would be surprised if he didn't. I think he'll still be a point a game player for even more than next year. He's just so talented, and he works well with any player that he plays with. Like, he's playing with some wingers that are not the high end caliber wingers, and he's still putting the points up. I mean, the smarts that he has out there on the power play, uh, those they can't be taught to everybody. So he reads the play so well. He knows when and where to pass the puck. He knows where and when to get himself open. So I can't see why that record doesn't fall next year.
All right. Well, Mike, is there anything else that you want to discuss in this week's episode?
No, but like I said, we do have the rematch on Tuesday night,
Oh,
Flyers
yeah, that's right.
Canadians.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, we'll be watching that. Maybe we'll talk about that again next week. Just we'll bring
let's
it
let
up quickly.
let's hope that the luck is on the Flyer side this time, because they need all the wins they can get now if they want to squeeze in there. So
I mean, they were in a better position last week, but they lost a couple of
yeah,
games, and it doesn't take
5 in a row
much.
they've lost. So that's uh, that's not good when you get two teams that are right on your tail. Actually, three, because the Islanders are even only a couple points behind them now as well. So
It's true. Yes, they're
uh,
right behind.
it's going to be a very, very close race. It's all going to depend on matchups between now and the end of the season, I think. So we'll
And I
see.
noticed. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Oh, no, no, that was it.
I just noticed too that in the other conference, that Vegas has pulled ahead somewhat.
Yeah, yeah, they pulled ahead of LA, so or they were. I know LA won last night, so I don't know if the standings have changed today, but they did pull ahead.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. All right. Well, remember to comment and tell us where we went wrong, folks. Like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next week. Have a good time, everyone. See you later. Bye.
See you later.